Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will show you 10 of my favorite art supplies that I reach out for my recent art projects. And the last one is not even an art supply. It's a smart substitute of a popular, expensive art supplies that people use. So stick around and I will see you in a second. The first art supply I want to talk about is this water-soluble graphite. It's by Lyra. And it comes as a stick with paper wrapped around it, which is really nice because you don't have to get your hands super yucky. If you just apply it on paper, it acts like a regular graphite. However, if you dip it into water or spray it upon contact with water, it kind of behaves like watercolor or some kind of paint. So let me just do this real quick. You can see the wet part makes a very different kind of impression on paper. And it's also pretty pressure sensitive, almost like the surface of this becomes a little almost spongy like, and then you can apply it on paper as you wish, and it makes a darker mark. If you use harder pressure, if you use more pressure, it's gonna appear darker. And if you go lighter, even with wetness, it's gonna appear lighter. Although you can still tell it's different from when it's dry. So I feel like this is a really versatile thing to have. So when I picked this up, I also bought a sharpener that is just for this stick. I have not used it yet, so I can't really say much about it. The only thing I would say about this sharpener is that it fits your finger, so be careful, don't get hurt or leave it out of children's reach. The second thing I want to recommend today is this marker. Actually, it's any marker that is really close to the paper that you're using. This particular one is Prismacolor. And this color itself is called Eggshell. It has two sides. One side is the finer tip, and the other side is the chiseled tip. What I have been using this one is to use it to sketch. So when I sketch with pencils, it leaves a mark, but sometimes you have to do a lot of post-production cleaning to get rid of it. But when you sketch with this, you can easily get rid of the mark with just a very simple color correction inside Photoshop. There you go. So I've been using this for drawing pasta. Let me just show you real quick here on my sketchbook. So over here, very lightly, you can see the sketching with the marker. And on top of that, I use a brush pen to go over it, which is what I'm gonna talk about next. And then over Photoshop, I can just easily get rid of the mark by recalibrating black and white. So there's that. And the third item is this brush. And this is by Pentel, I believe. And this particular one is very fine. And it says FP5F and then a bunch of Japanese, which I cannot read. So when you open it up, it basically has an ink well on the longer side of the body. And then when you squeeze it, like a water pen, the ink flows down. So this is really cool if you want to make brush marks. When it's pretty dry, it makes this really delicious texture, which I use a lot for my work. The next thing I want to talk about is this Kakimori nib. This nib is really, really versatile. As you can tell, it's very chunky in its belly, which means that it can hold a lot of ink. So just pick up any color of fountain pen ink. Avoid using the pigment-based ink though, because it will gunk up the tip of the nib. You just dip inside and you can make really, really fine marks. But when you tilt the pen, you can make some very cool marks with various thickness. And once you're done, you just dip it inside water and then dry it up. It's pretty easy to take care of. And these days, I also find myself really loving these crayons. These crayons are also water soluble. They're produced by Dash. It's Neocolor 2 series. So when you just draw on paper, it produces like a crayon-like marks because it's crayons. But if you dip it in water, the mark starts to change because it reacts to water. It's kind of like watercolor mark, but with more grains in it or grit in it. It's really cool. And you can also draw it dry on paper and then just grab a brush of some kind and then activate with water from there. Just dip your brush in water and then activate your marks from there, which is really, really cool. This gives you a lot of really cool control over the border. So there's that, and you can use it to mix as well. So if I'm adding a second color here, I can mix it right on paper. And it produces this beautiful light purple. The next thing I want to talk about is this little multi-sharpener. It looks like a pencil sharpener because it is, but it's really smart because it gives you different angles of tips, for example. So it has 5 numbers in it. This is number 3. I use this for my colored pencil because if I sharpen it too long, the tip is too long, it breaks very easily. And this one on the right is number 5. So this is a regular black wing pencil. The point can be long because it doesn't break easily. So based on what kind of pencil you have, you can customize the angle. And the blade is pretty sharp. So when you are twirling your pencil inside, you can feel the cut is pretty smooth and buttery. I like that. The next thing I want to talk about is this weird looking nib. It looks like kitchen cleaver. Let me just give you a quick example. I'm gonna dip this inside this fountain pen ink, and it does hold a lot of ink as well. And very similar to the first nib that we talked about, this one gives you a variation of width as well. I really like how this one allows me to write quickly, because sometimes when you write calligraphy, you can tell when the nib or the brush is too soft. You have to kind of slow down to make sure it doesn't go where you don't want it to be. But when the nib is really stiff and hard, you're able to go a lot faster. So I really like this nib currently. And the next thing I want to talk about is this Sailor fountain pen. It comes in pretty cool colors. I think there are 4 different colors. Each one of them have a different angle. And this is one of my favorite because it has bent nib. And the nib angle is pretty flat, which means that it gives me a lot of angle variation. It's also great for lettering and calligraphy. And you can also use it to draw some really varied quick strokes on the sketchbook. So if you're sketching on something, this can, you can lower the angle to fill in an area quickly. And you can also use the fine point. If you want to use it for calligraphy, it's a really good candidate. because the inkwell is inside, so your stroke can be continuous. You can just keep going and write long words without having to dip somewhere for the ink. So this one is produced by Sailor. I will leave links for all the things that I talk about in this video. So don't worry about finding specifics right now. This is something I want to talk about next. It's called Swedish cloth. So basically it's a thin sponge that has a lot of capacity for absorbing water. I use this to dry my brushes. For example, if I have like nasty paint on my brush or I have extra water that I need to get rid of, I just like dab it on here and it will get rid of the water. And this is also great for cleaning the table or doing stuff in the kitchen. I don't mix them up. I cut this specifically for my art stuff. If you have a choice, I would say get the black color because it doesn't show the mess easily. It doesn't get darker than this. So highly recommend. Last but not least, the next art supply is probably the most unexpected. You actually would not find it inside any art store because to find this involves some creative thinking. So many of you probably know about acrylic gouache, which is pretty nice to paint. It has great coverage, but the only downside is that once it dries, you cannot use it anymore. And these kind of tubes are very expensive. So you want to keep the longevity of the paint out of the tube. A lot of artists buy Stay Wet palette, which is designed for artists to use and it works great, but it's also very expensive and it doesn't really stay tightly shut as much as I would like to. So instead, I got this dry box, supposedly for kayaking, which I know nothing about, but it's still really cool and very effective for my purpose. So this is how I use it. I have a piece of Swedish cloth at the bottom that is pre-wetted, and I have a sheet of parchment paper, and on top, I mix my paint over here. And when you're done with the paint, you can just close the lid and everything will stay wet inside. Just be careful, don't let it stay wet for too long because you can create mold, which is also true for any other Stay Wet palette. All right, so that's all I want to show you today. I hope you find these art supplies inspiring and I will see you in a future video.